Because nobody wants people to fucking live on the streets, okay? I don't want that. Like, what the fuck? Nobody wants that. That's insane. And it's weird that, like, we just have to act like that's not a thing that's happening all the time. And there's only two ways out of that. You either, like, continue applying pressure to homeless people and, like, brutally suppress them, kill them, draw them, push them into camps outside of the city borders like Rick Caruso was suggesting. Or you house them and start the process of healing these people that have withstood a tremendous amount of trauma.
It doesn't seem that hard. I feel like you can make like so many of these little.
But the housing market, Ethan,
it's not. It wouldn't even be. I feel like it wouldn't even participate. You're not you're making these little like. Not even. It's like half a studio, but it's got all you need. It's got like the AC.
Reappropriating hotels,
microwave.
Reappropriating hotels.
We do that in LA, don't we?
I know. That's actually one of the many initiatives. The Project Room Key is what it's called. It's a great idea. Except the fucking Chamber of Commerce despises it because they think that no hotel will ever recover from this. We rarely ever utilize eminent domain. It's very frustrating. There are so many hurdles in front of projects like that, and especially.
But we have the money to be like.
We do.
I'm saying I don't think it's that expensive to build like a tiny little abode with like the bare minimum necessities, so that you're not dying and starving.
The Californian economy does not have a money problem at this point.
Yeah, that's what I'm so confused about.
We have. You
could probably build one of those for like $10,000, maybe even less.
Bro, we've literally put billions of dollars aside that people have voted on. Okay. To specifically implement these initiatives. The problem is the money gets put in a fucking the money gets put in a wallet and it just sits there because you can't even launch these initiatives because every single time you try to like build even a homeless shelter, which is like an inadequate solution to begin with, right? It's not even a good solution. It's demonstrably a failure in America. Even then people lose their fucking minds. You do these like look to any.
Do you want to live next to a homeless shelter? That's what you always hear.
Yeah, and for me, the alternative is like, what? It's better. It's still better than fucking having dudes live outside of your house and like shit on your fucking front yard. Like, what are you talking about? It's like so cruel. And
like, that's how all real estate is. There's some places that are more desirable than others, and you can move if you don't like it.
But that's oftentimes what it comes down to is like. Local community groups protesting it and saying, no, we don't want this in our neighborhood.
I feel like you could get...
like everybody wants the shelter, but nobody wants to live near it.
There's got to be like a huge plot of land somewhere on the outskirts of Los Angeles. But I don't know if people would want to live that far. I don't know how that works either.
No, that's not how you solve this anyway, because there's always new people becoming homeless. Because people don't become homeless because they're bad people.
You have like an office or a program where people can say, hey, I don't have a place to live. And then you take them to a place where they have a shelter. It doesn't have to be in the heart of the city.
But there's also the other side of the issue, which is something that people always forget. There's two different problems here with homelessness, okay? On the one hand, you have the existing homeless person on the street. How do we solve that problem? How do we heal? How do we help that person? On the other side, you have people that are also becoming homeless right now. Both of these problems can be solved by decommodifying housing, okay? Taking the necessary initiatives to make it as expensive as possible, as humanly possible, to be a landlord and to own multiple residential real estate properties, and providing adequate social housing as well. Because you need to make sure that people aren't getting priced out of the housing market, so that there aren't new homeless people every day that are becoming homeless and living on the streets. So. We're not doing any of that, though.
I agree.
We're not doing that, and that requires you to build new units, and not new units specifically like as luxury condominiums that are going to sit empty for fucking a decade. You know what I mean? While you wait for some Saudi sovereign investment fund to come in and purchase the rest of the units.
Right.
I mean, like immediately build social housing. We have the money, but that would depress the housing market in California.
I don't see how. This is.
What do you mean?
There's enough people who are buying property. There's people who can't afford a place to live.
It depresses it because now you have an alternative. You have an alternative.
I don't think people are going to be like, I want to live in public housing instead of like an apartment, because if they have the means, I don't see that happening a lot.
No, it's scarcity. Scarcity is part of the reason why the housing market is the way it is in Los Angeles and in these big real estate markets.
Yeah.
Scarcity, Airbnb, for example, is yet another reason as to why there's more scarcity, because it's not being used as long-term viable real estate that, houses families. It's now being used as a substitute for hotels. So now you have scarcity because there's only a limited amount of land, and utilizing the land in a specific way, or at least zoning restrictions that they've created in these real estate markets, is one of the many different reasons as to why this situation is completely unmanageable. I'm not one of those YIMBY weirdos who's I'm not. I debated Larry Elder on this issue literally, and he is like a libertarian YIMBY who wants to just keep pumping investments and keep building new housing, and new developments all around Los Angeles. But the right way to do that is by making sure that we have mixed income housing that can handle the density of the population. We have zoning restrictions, single family
For
homes.
sure. The zoning restrictions in LA are nuts.
Yeah.
Dude.
That make it impossible to overcome.
There's a couple square miles where you can build tall buildings.
Yeah.
For residential. But yeah, I mean, listen, on both ends, it's crazy. I mean, the fact that giant investment firms can buy up 30% of all houses on the market, which is what was happening a few years ago with BlackRock, is
can we just
nuts?
Can we just say you can't do that anymore?
I think
doesn't that just
fine.
seem obvious to everyone?
Or at least I
almost feel like that should be bipartisan. Obviously not developers and people that directly benefit from this, but I feel like you could even easily get Republican voters on board with hey, BlackRock shouldn't own 30% of your town.
It
just seems so obvious.
Well, and it's this is benefiting 5 dudes who own BlackRock against the interest of whatever 10 million people that live in Los Angeles.
I think it's more complicated than that. I think that the reality of the situation is that there are in the United States of America, housing is seen as the most viable way to develop generational wealth.
Okay. Yeah.
And it is to a certain degree true. This is why redlining was so significantly discriminatory towards black people in the Jim Crow North, for example. And the problem is, because of that, a lot of middle class, working poor, or upper middle class individuals who have their houses for generations now, due to prior policy initiatives that were very helpful in home ownership and boosting home ownership, a lot of people do have a vested interest in maintaining their housing values. So the people that do actually go out to vote, those who have more capital than the prior generation or than the upcoming generation, they are the ones who do check the housing market, the real estate market pretty regularly.
They think that because BlackRock is buying every house on the market, their property value goes up.
Well, because it's not just BlackRock. I'm saying that no, this would genuinely to take a chunk of the net worth from not just BlackRock, obviously, but legitimate single family house owners.
I'm not opposed to people having 2 houses, in the situation where you're we have this house.
No, I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about people who own one house.
I don't see why I would necessarily devalue it.
Well, if there's more supply.
We're just talking about
if you own a house and you have the equity in the house, even if it's just one, you're benefiting from the fact that
supply. We're just talking about saying BlackRock, you can't own 30% of the houses in LA.
That won't legitimately. I don't. That'll put a dent. It's like Airbnb. That's a good initiative. The BlackRock thing that you're suggesting, good initiative, but but all of this is still working to boost the prices of the available inventory of houses, which many people have taken loans against, many people have taken mortgages against.
Yeah.
Right. So like, if their value declines, all of a sudden they're in a tricky financial situation that will cause them to have a reactionary pushback.
I can see why mass public housing could reduce the value, but I don't understand the limiting how much houses somebody can own reduces the value of the properties.
Just as far as, well, because a lot of those houses sit empty, right? It's not necessarily that BlackRock owns a shitload of houses, it's that they just buy up a bunch of houses and let them sit and appreciate in value so that they can flip them for a profit after a while.
So it's just, right. It's just that they own.
It's that they're using.
They drive the price up.
They're playing the real estate market for a profit, right? And like Hassan said earlier, it's about long-term decommodifying shelter.
I wonder if there's a way for the
we
government.
shouldn't necessarily let these people be doing this with this fundamental
I don't
think healthcare is the only thing that is susceptible to the market forces of being an inelastic demand good. I think housing should be categorized under a similar in a similar fashion, because when without shelter you die. You have to get shelter.
When you do gun bans, you buy the guns from the people. I wonder if there's a way to compensate single families who are
right. And I guess that's why it's so hard to see movement on this, because it is like the domino effect of all of these things.
There's got to be a way to.
I'm fully cognizant of how difficult of an endeavor this is why I always go back to like talking about the average voter that owns like the average voter. Chatters that are watching right now, their parents, let's say, who've had their house since like the 60s, 70s, that they're sitting on. That property value has skyrocketed over the course of those years. You might even have paid off all of your, you might own the house fully. And then maybe you took out a mortgage on it, right? Took out a loan against your house. If the value of that diminishes, all of a sudden your net worth is going down. So now you feel like your nest egg is actually in a perilous situation. You're going to react to that. You're not going to want that to happen, which is why like it is somewhat authoritarian. My assessment of the situation is like, build more housing, don't fucking tell the public, just do it, ironically Chinese Communist Party style, just like build housing and be like, no, we just built it here, shut the fuck up.
Well, another thing you could do is like, starting now you can't do it anymore.
Grandfather it in kind of thing.
Yeah, you don't do it retroactively. Just like, starting now you can't. Anyone who already owns it, we're not gonna touch. But going forward, you can't buy more than like 2 properties per entity.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
Nothing,
well,
right?
then you're giving a massive layup to those who already own multiple units, though.
Right,
like,
but it's better than nothing.
I think the better solution overall is to tax it so much that it is literally not viable to own multiple units beyond like the nest egg that you have, that is like your second house that you're using as a vehicle for capital accumulation.
Saw the people in the chat suggesting that we should just heavily tax empty units specifically.
That's a great idea, because empty housing makes no sense. It's disgusting. It's like freak shit to just have it
is pretty gross.
Yeah.
That would be a great
There's a massive warehousing problem in New York, for example. They make it these guys are real predatory. They use every legal move in the positive direction to their benefit. You know what I mean? Like, there'll be like rent stabilization in certain areas, and if you have a rent-controlled building, then you sit on it and you try to make sure that every single person living in those rent-controlled units eventually leave, right? If you have a holdout, you're kind of fucked, but most people don't want to live under like shitty conditions where the house is like not being, your unit is not being fixed or whatever, right? And then they just sit on it and they wait, and they warehouse that unit or make it impossible to rent, because there's like mixed income housing restrictions that you have in places like New York, where you build a skyscraper, a certain percentage of that, I think 10%, has to be like affordable units. Specifically, they usually have a second elevator for the poors, actually. If you're lucky enough to be able to get into one of those units, as a matter of fact, because there's a lottery for it. But what they will try to do is like if there's new available rent controlled units that are in the market, they make it almost impossible to get the unit because they put like the fattest of down payments. Like you have to put like a down payment that's like 3 months rent, which if you are looking for affordable units, you don't have that kind of fucking money to begin with. So they use every initiative to their advantage and engage in regulatory capture. But that's not, surprising.
All the people I know in LA that live in rent-controlled houses are like, I would say, doing extremely well and don't need it. Do you know that? Have you seen that? Like I know people that live in rent-controlled houses and they're like,
personally somebody that has that? And
they've lived there for like 5 to 10 years.
You just stay there forever, yeah.
Oh yeah, they got more money.
They're probably making a combined income of like, over 200,000.
I think that's pretty funny because like when it almost feels like when you take away one of the financial burdens of like the most significant financial burden, which most Americans dump half of their salaries into immediately.
I am rectangular. I feel it in my bones. I am rectangular. I feel no hope.
Off of those, God. That was such a nice conclusion of the conversation, too. And
we were saying, he says, we need to decommodify housing. I said, I totally agree.
Okay.
Then I said, we need to blank.
Nope.
It's funny because like there's a clip of me talking to my friend at the time who was a fucking landlord out there from like 5 years ago, and people always point to that and he's like, he's a radical, and it's like, no, it's always the same dynamic of like constantly saying, well, what about if people don't comply with the law? Well, then yeah, the state needs to enforce the rule of law. Like we do that every fucking day for the working poor. Why can't we do that for rich people ever?
All right.
Which is, by the way, I wasn't the one who said anything about landlords. He was.
Yeah. No,
I just want to point that out.
I said, let's take them out. Here, this is what I want to do to landlords.
Take them out to dinner and ask them to be reasonable with us and find a solution that's amenable to all parties.
Hold on. Landlords watching this right now.
Oh, God, here we go.
Dude, come on. I'm not saying...
Me, a landlord watching this episode.
We got to go. It's 12:30.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for playing. Spot the Socialist. That's right. We'll be sending government officials to their house later today to re-educate them.
Hell yeah.
So that we can
rehabilitation, baby. I think it's very good.
Re-education, reintegration here today at the Leftovers Podcast. Watch out, Uyghurs. That's right. We got our eye on you. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thank you to Hassan. We didn't get to the auto strike. We're having too much fun, guys. Too much fun. But we'll see you next week for Leftovers. See you tomorrow. Everyone else on Friday.
Much better episode tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously.
Yeah.
And thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Don't wait.